Welcome back to state-sponsored conspiracy podcast. We are the only podcast that is openly sponsored by the U.S. government, which I think you should respect. There's lots of podcasts that are run by the feds, but at least we're being honest about it. This is a interview I had with Ameera Atlantis, who is a past life regression hypnotist, healer, and someone who claims to be a Atlantean in a former life, as well as a mermaid. So, she obviously has a lot to say, a lot to teach us. You know, you can decide for yourself what you think of her claims. You know me, I'm very open-minded. I'm not a skeptical guy. I leave that to you guys. That's for you guys to decide. But the interview is great. It's enlightening. It's, I think, better than the previous interview. And then after the interview, my co-host returns and we discuss things a little bit, as well as read listener emails. So without further ado, Ameera Atlantis. I guess we should really just get right into it. On the podcast, we've been talking about Atlantis. It's a place that has fascinated me for a variety of reasons, really. And so I think probably the best way to start would be to tell us a little bit about yourself and what your connection to Atlantis is.
Very early in my spiritual awakening, I started having some somatic things happen in my body. So I had a very kind of dramatic, out of the blue, 2x4 to the head spiritual awakening. And after that happened, I did what most of us do when we go through, our awakening. I started to get my hands on and read everything I could to learn about metaphysics, to learn about spirituality, and to essentially catch up to everything that I had forgotten for, nearly 40 years of my life. And so part of that practice was also, to meditate. And so I had this little meditation space in my room, a chair, where I would go daily and do my meditation practice. And one day I was, just sitting there meditating, and my hands and arms began to move up around me, independent of my will or independent of my asking them to. My body would just start to move, my arms in this kind of flowy, swimmy, graceful motions. And when I would look at my, arms, I would see this happening, and I didn't really know what was going on. I thought maybe there were angels playing with, I just didn't know what was happening, but I knew that there was some kind of force or energy coming up through me, within me, that was allowing my body to move and writhe independently of me willing it to. And I found that, as I worked with it, my hands would do these spirally motions around people and, take away headaches, and I would be able to soothe my children. And it was something very, mystical and magical happening, but I really had no idea what it was. So I had been reading many of the books I'd been reading were about past life regression therapy. I was reading Brian Weiss and Dolores Cannon, and just really, really fascinated by the idea of other lives, or potentially living simultaneous lives. So in my quest to figure out what was going on with my body, my soul urged me to go see a past life regression therapist. And I was living in Portland, Oregon, in that area at the time. So I went and saw a wonderful psychologist and regression therapist by the name of Julia Ingram in Portland. And, I told her what was going on, and she put me on the couch, talked me into hypnosis. And right away, I went into this somatic, leaping up and down with my, my body and my arms on her couch, exclaiming, "I'm a mermaid, I'm a mermaid." And I felt myself swimming down in the ocean, literally swimming to this underwater city that I identified as Atlantis. I was like, I'm swimming in the ocean. I'm a mermaid, and there's Atlantis under there, and it showed up to me like a cartoon. Like I felt like a cartoon, and Atlantis looked like a cartoon, and it had this kind of bubble over the top of it, like you would see like in a movie or a cartoon. And I
Mm-hmm.
thought, oh Lord, this woman is going to think I'm crazy. Like I can't tell her this, but I did. And of course, she just kept saying, tell me more. What else do you see? And talking me along my path. And as I went through that regression and went into my soul remembrance that I'm actually an incarnated merbeing, that experience changed my life and the trajectory of like who I thought I was and who I thought I was meant to do, what I thought I was meant to do on this planet. I was a wife and a mother. I was living in suburbia, driving a minivan, living the life. And I really thought that is what it was going to be. And I was, learning about spirituality and metaphysics and learning to read tarot cards. And after that experience, it changed my outlook so much because I didn't even know mermaids were a real thing. I
Right.
didn't even know Atlantis was like, I had just barely started learning about Atlantis. So I went on this quest.
What was, if you don't mind me interrupting,
Sure, go ahead.
what was your, did you have any real knowledge or experience of Atlantis prior to this
No,
regression?
other than just like hearing about it as a mythical land, like most of us do, the
Mm-hmm.
lost land of Atlantis, I had never even really given it much thought. And I'd never even really given the idea of like mermaids and fairies and all those, being a real thing.
So, well, you're sort of your typical sort of uninitiated,
Yeah,
person.
totally. And so I went on a quest to start reading about Atlantis, and I found Diana Cooper's book, Discover Atlantis. And as I was reading through that book, it just blew open like all the things that, I had suppressed or forgotten, everything in my DNA through reading that book and remembering and reading her words and reading about the 12 chakras and life in Atlantis. It just blew me wide open. And I started to get my hands on everything I could about Atlantis. And I also went through 3 levels of Julia's past life regression training because I felt like I wanted more experiences, more remembrance of Atlantis. And that's a great way to recover soul information is through a regression. And I wanted to give that gift to other people. Because I saw how much it brought back to me as a knowledge and remembrance of who I am and what I'm here to do for the planet.
That sort of started you on your journey to help other people with their
That started
regression.
me on my own journey and also started me on my journey to kind of find out a little bit more about how I was to tangibly help people on this planet through hypnosis and through having soul and past life regressions into other realms and realities to find out that information and bring it forward to help them on this timeline.
This timeline, everyone cares about it.
Yeah.
But what really interests me is, via your past life regressions, were you able to learn anything about, the historical Atlantis and like what life was like on
Oh,
Atlantis?
absolutely. Absolutely. When you go through a training, you receive a lot of regressions. And so when I would journey into Atlantis, I would remember myself coming up out of the water and I discovered the underwater city that I thought was Atlantis was actually the Mer Kingdom, Merlantis, which is sister city to Atlantis. That was, of course, on the land. And so I started to remember myself coming up out of the water and shape-shifting, coming up out of a portal close to the Temple of Poseidon, shape-shifting, growing legs, and then being able to walk upon the land with the Atlanteans and going into the healing temples and assisting and helping the Atlanteans with their energetic and 13 chakra and aura healing. So I spent a lot of time in these regressions going and just essentially discovering Atlantis and what life and that society from the last fall of Atlantis 13,000 years ago. There were 5 rises and fallings. And the ones my soul wanted me to focus on was the last incarnation of 13,000 years ago.
So when you say you went into the healing temple in a past life, were you a sort of Atlantean doctor?
Well, so remember, first of all, that past lives are simultaneous. There's no past, present, and future. So it's actually a simultaneous lifetime happening at the same time this one is. So when you wrap your mind around what a quote past life really is, it's just a part of your oversoul on another line of time doing something alongside this other reality. So I wasn't really a doctor, but I did act as a healer and a teacher. And there were many mer that would come up out of the water and, play the role and assist the Atlanteans and helping to keep their chakras and their auras, their body of energy, intact, so that they could retain their fifth dimensional consciousness to spirit while being for the first time in a third dimensional body with, emotions and, five senses and all the things that, being human entails.
That's interesting. So the Merlantians or the mermaids and the Atlanteans, did they always get along? Was this an alliance?
It was alliance. It was an agreement. The mer people agreed because we loved the humans. It's kind of like that aerial thing. We wanted to be where the people were. We were so fascinated by them and so just in love with the human form that many of us volunteered not only to hold space, in the water, but to come and be with them and serve as their guides and their healers and their teachers. We taught them about things like the cycles of nature, the sunrises, the sunsets, the moon phases, honoring earth, honoring their food. We brought all that knowledge to them in a practical sense so they could, again, execute their life out as a human.
So the Atlanteans were humans. You see a lot of people online saying that the Atlanteans were, not from Earth. What do you think about that?
Well, of course they were not from Earth. None of us are from Earth. We're all from somewhere else. And so those who volunteered for the Atlantean experiment came from all star systems, all planets, all around the galaxy to participate and be a third dimensional being in a physical form instead of that fifth dimensional and higher consciousness, from whence they came.
So when you say Atlantean experiment,
yes,
what do you mean by that?
So Prime Creator decided to create, we're experimenters, first of all. Humans, we are creators and we're experimenters, right? Yeah. We're always trying things out because contrast keeps life interesting. Yeah. Contrast keeps life exciting. So we're always trying things. Some of our experiments as humans turn out pretty good. Some of our experiments don't turn out so well, but we live in a free will universe and we get to have that free will and execute that free will to find out what it really means to be a creator in physical form. So the experiment, the Atlantean experiment, and there were actually 5 rising and fallings of Atlantis. There were 5 Atlantean experiments where beings came down, inhabited a denser body, came down very pure, connected, got adjusted to, emotions. And then can we hang on to this fifth dimensional consciousness? Can remember that our connection to God and nature is the most important thing of all. And 5 times the experiment ended, not failed, but ended because the Atlanteans from each era, of course, got caught up in AI, technology, jealousy, greed, all the human foibles. So we again, this 5th and final experiment happened. And this time we added in, or the Atlantean experiment added in the connection or the communion with the Mer people to help them potentially create a different outcome for the Atlantean experiment.
So once you have the Mer people and the Atlanteans linking up, you essentially have sort of the real balance. Is that what you're saying?
Exactly. So, the Atlanteans and, the humans sort of held that more masculine or, masculine, divine masculine energy. And the Mer people hold, especially the Mer beings, hold the divine feminine templates. We are originally of Mu or Lemuria. We came through the Stargate known as Mintaka. When the Mu experiment was conceived of, the family of Mu came through Mintaka, the blue water planet, and many of them were aquafarians or mer people who came through as Mu. And so the Mu and the mer people were always here. The mer people have been here since the inception of Earth. When the Atlantean experiment was, birthed or conceived of, we came up to merge with them in order to bring forward those feminine templates, the divine feminine. And we see mermaid iconography everywhere in the world today. Mermaids have come up out of mythology and the unconscious and arrived into like the conscious collective on here and now in this timeline, because we are once again bringing forward those divine feminine, those sacred feminine templates to harmonize with the divine masculine and, attempt to not overtake the divine masculine, but to allow it to, again, this harmonization where these energies are meant to work together equally and simultaneously and in balance.
It's interesting that you say that, sort of the mermaid mythology is so pervasive, because I literally feel like I see mermaids almost everywhere.
Right.
And I tell people this and they don't believe me.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Starbucks has got their mermaid, and there's all kinds of shows. The Aquaman Aquaman series came out. There's a new show on Netflix called Mer People. There's Disney's got mer shows, like the mermaid iconography. Every little girl wants a tail. They all want to be a mermaid. Women are, and I hear from women all the time. When I first came out and publicly stated I'm an incarnated mer being, Spirit directed me to open a YouTube channel and began to talk openly about Atlantis and the mer people. And I really thought when I did that I was going to get a lot of pushback, or, people were going to make fun of me or, call me crazy or whatever. And that really didn't happen. Instead, I had just throngs of women and some men too, writing me, having sessions with me saying, thank you. I feel I have a mermaid soul. I've always felt I'm an incarnated mermaid here in this human form, and thank you for validating my experience.
I've seen that. Yeah. Online, you really do get, a lot of these people able to come out finally. But, while we're on the topic of sort of the, mermaids in American culture, obviously the biggest thing right now is the live action Little Mermaid.
Right.
And there was some controversy over the casting of a black actress as a mermaid, and people said, what color are mermaids?
Yeah.
And people, it was a whole big thing. Were there black mermaids in Marlantis? Well,
the original Little Mermaid is modeled after Yemaya, who is the African ocean mother goddess. So the Africans, the Brazilians, and the Cubans all have their water orisha is a black mermaid.
So it's almost like this whole controversy could have been avoided.
Oh, it's just silly. It's absolutely silly. And of course, in the mer kingdom, there are mer beings and aquafarians in general. There are more than just stereotypical mermaids in the water world. There are all varieties of aquafarian and humanoid type of beings of all shapes, sizes, and colors. So, when they changed her to a dark-skinned mer, I mean, that's naturally what she actually should be. And, just the fact that everybody, got very got on this uproar over that, it was kind of cute and kind of silly and ridiculous. Because of course, Yemaya is a dark-skinned woman, a dark-skinned mer.
That's interesting. But I guess the average person just doesn't know much about Yemaya.
Yes.
But when you say that there was sort of other kinds of mermaids, all shapes and sizes, what sort of diversity was there among the Merlantians?
So among them, the Merlantians were mostly made of the literal, what you would think of as a mer person, humanoid body, humanoid features, and a tail. That was the mer kingdom. There were some other varieties of aquafarians who were there as well, because anyone, any aquafarian being with the right vibration and frequency could enter and exit and be there. And many of them were, I remember having a crystal, a special crystal embedded in my chest that was like a homing device. Merlantis was cloaked. That's why I saw the bubble over. It was cloaked, it was protected. And only if you had that specific crystal were you allowed entrance and exit to the Merland to protect it. And so no matter how far away we went, we could always find our way home. We could always find our way back, and we would come close to, Merlantis, and then just kind of poof, kind of seem to disappear into thin water if we were being followed, and be able to return home.
I think while we're on the topic of sort of the, mainstream mer mythology and Atlantis, what do you personally think about Randall Carlson, who, for those who might not know, listening, has appeared on the Joe Rogan Experience many times and discussed how Atlantis is real?
Well, I mean, I'm not too familiar with his work, but he's right. Like, Atlantis is real. And it's not just a mythological land. Atlantis and Lemuria were real, physical, as well as etheric lands. And we see remnants of them, of course, in Africa, Bermuda, all of these. And I really feel that kind of as the more the earth sort of shakes and quakes and land masses fall, there will also be land masses that will rise. And many of those land masses will be the remains of ancient Atlantis.
Yeah, that is something that he talks about a lot. What I wonder a lot, I don't know if this is something that you would know a lot about or not, but I wonder often, what do the people in power know about Atlantis? What does someone like Joe Biden know about Atlantis?
Well, I don't think Joe Biden knows anything about anything, but I know what you're saying. I know what you're saying. Oh, I think the powers that be know a hell of a lot. I think that, there is so much cover up, and there is so much like this agenda to keep Atlantis, or the idea of Atlantis, as some kind of a fable or a story or a joke. Like, that is really real. They don't want us to know the true origins of this earth, number one, or of that Atlantean civilization that thrived for hundreds of thousands of years, and where we really today get a lot of our technology.
What would you say is an example of a technology that we got descended from Atlantis or Merlantis?
Well, there's all, technology is supposed to be our friend. Yeah. Technology is good when used in the right hands and the right power. Some of the technology that has come forward that is, not benevolent is the genetic experiments. They were very intense and some horrific genetic experiments that took place in Atlantis. I actually remember an aspect of my soul that was a genetic scientist performing these heinous experiments on creatures, blending them together, blending their DNA together to see what we could create that was obviously inorganic in the name of science. And so part of my soul penance and my dharma on this timeline, once I learned that about myself, is to course correct the spiral of Atlantis through my work and heal that aspect of me. And we all have perpetrator and we all have victim lifetimes. We've all been bad guys, really bad guys, and we've all been good guys. We've all been perpetrators. We've all been victims. We have been all of it. In my years as a regression therapist, we've been black, white, gay, straight, big, male, female. We've been all of it. So when I recognized or met myself as a pretty rotten person in Atlantis, it brought home the idea that we are all one, that under the law of one, that the opportunity for grace and forgiveness and humility to look into our soul and look when we have not been the nicest person is just as important as going and heal those lifetimes where, we were wounded or we were the victim. So I got a little off track with your question. But the genetic experiments are a really good example of how on this timeline, there are many inorganic things, clonings happening in our society that have been around, for many, many, many years. And we have no idea really how advanced that those genetic experiments and those clonings are on this timeline.
It's interesting that you say that, these sorts of, organic chimera hybrids, because you see in The Little Mermaid, you see these talking animals. Is that something that the Atlanteans would have created?
No, I think the talking animals are that's just a cartoon and they've got to have the animals.
Oh.
But I will tell you that sirens, the stereotypical sirens with that, the beautiful mermaids who turn into these hideous creatures and eat the sailors, those are a result of an Atlantean experiment gone wrong. Those are not true, organic, natural merbeings. They are an experiment. Interesting.
That's very disturbing that they would create something like that. But I mean, I'm sure the U.S. government has created these sorts of things.
Yep, absolutely.
Do you know anything about what sort of Atlantean-esque experiments the current U.S. government could be involved in?
Well, I will tell you that I believe that, and it's kind of commonly known that President Eisenhower met with some extraterrestrials who needed, some human DNA to save their race, and traded us for technological advancements. And I believe that Eisenhower said yes to that because he felt that there was some technology we could use that could really help humanity. I think he had good benevolent intentions to make that agreement to help the Zetas recover their race and to help humanity. And think about how technology since World War II, how fast it's grown. Like leaps and bounds, we went into the technological age. And I believe that's due to, maybe Eisenhower and other presidents or government agreements with extraterrestrials who shared their knowledge with us. So pretty much everything that you can think of that's been happening over the last 30, 40, 50 years has come from Atlantis, and that technology revived from, the Atlantean times.
Is it getting to the point where there's so much Atlantean technology that it's almost as though we are in Atlantis right now?
We are revisiting the same spiral. Because remember, I like to explain time like a spiral, like layers instead of linear. So you've got, the Atlantean timeline on one spiral, and maybe down some layers beneath it, you've got this spiral of time and many, many other layers in between. They're all interwoven. And we are revisiting that specific spiral, which is actually on purpose. It is my feeling that, Eisenhower in the beginning really saw this as a way to course correct and heal the past of humanity. But instead, those who got a hold of the technology, and there were many, many benevolent Atlanteans incarnated, there are many, many not so benevolent. The perpetrators from Atlantis have also come back, and a lot of that technology has been hijacked, the AI and so forth, and put to use. And that with all these children that have come in, the indigo children, all the star children came in to really reverse and course correct and create a new outcome on this timeline. Because the reason we repeat a pattern is to create a different outcome. If you are in the same relationship pattern over and over and over again, your soul is always trying to go back into that pattern to stop it, right?
Yeah.
And so this Atlantean timeline, and a lot of people are like, oh, why are we doing Atlantis again? And, many people who feel closer to Lemuria feel like have this shadow Atlantis, like, anti-Atlantis because of what they experience, the destruction and the pain and the heartache that the Atlanteans imposed upon the Lemurians, and they don't want to do this again. They're rejecting the Atlantis, but you cannot heal something unless you revisit it, unless you address that shadow. And we as a collective, as humanity, as a collective, decide to make a new outcome. And that's what we're doing through ascension on this timeline. Instead of being fifth dimensional beings in a third dimensional body, trying to retrain our spiritual connection, we are third dimensional beings going back into fifth dimensional consciousness and reversing the process.
Do you ever, because of this process and this ascension, and because you get this Lemurian pushback, is there ever any friction there? Do you ever have, big problems with Lemurians?
Well, I'm not going to call it big problems, but I definitely, there's definitely a crowd out there, Lemurians, and the Lemurians were legitimately hurt and abused by the Atlanteans. Like, that's a real thing. They were enslaved. They were persecuted, and ultimately the Atlantean civilization pushed down the Lemurian civilization so hard that it was a big part of why Lemuria fell. Lemuria never fell in vibration. They never fell in consciousness, the Lemurians. They do not have the same karma that Atlantis does. And so
but at the same, sometimes, do you ever feel like sometimes it's just like, move on? Like,
yeah, absolutely. I was actually just about to get there. So part of my education with, people who feel the shadow Atlantis is, look, we are one. You have also been Lemurian or Atlantean. You just don't remember. You remember being the victim and the good guy, but part of your soul was also an Atlantis being the bad guy. So until we make amends with the idea that we are all of it, we have participated in all of it, and that we are all one, healing, it slows down the healing. So yes, part of me wants to go, you guys, you got to move on. Like, we have to get over this hump of victim perpetrator, which is a cycle that has held humanity down since Atlantis. Blame, shame, and guilt. This
probably won't surprise you. I tried to get someone from the Lemurian Fellowship on this podcast.
Yeah.
They were a total dick. They would not come on the show.
Yeah. Well, and these are our beings who are still living in their victim mentality. Mm-hmm. And they don't understand the law of one, and they don't understand that, that their oversoul has participated in many, many terrible things. They just haven't been shown yet. So yeah, we just have to let them go through their own healing process and discover their own shadow, and, keep it moving.
We can only hope, I guess. The one thing I did want to ask, moving away from Atlantis slightly, you write on your website that you have a close association with the Jewish Kabbalist Archangel Metatron.
Yes.
What is that relationship like for you?
So, for me, Metatron has many aspects. He has many dimensions to him. So I'm not Jewish, and I only sent a little bit about Kabbalah, but I do know that he is the overseer of the Tree of Life. And he is the holder of the sacred geometry configuration known as Metatron's Cube. Metatron was the primary architect of Atlantis. The Platonic solids, Metatron Cube, are the shapes and patterns that create our physical reality. So the template for Atlantis was sacred geometry. So Metatron alongside Poseidon, because of Poseidon, of course, was integral in creating and recreating Atlantis. It's a little known fact that Metatron and sacred geometry, that is what Atlantis and the Atlantean society, as far as building shapes went, how food was planted and grown, how, homes were constructed. He was an integral part of bringing sacred geometry to Atlantis.
Do you ever feel like the character Megatron was intentionally named closely to Metatron to implant that idea in the public consciousness?
Yeah, I kind of do, because Metatron is also known as the Archangel of Children.
Wow. Sort of like Megatron.
So there's no accidents. Yes, there's totally no accidents.
Yeah, you see these coincidences everywhere, and it's like they can't keep this up.
Well, and some of these things, I think they are planted purposely also to awaken people, to help people to awaken, because you see Transformers and you see this Megatron and his relationship with children, and you hear about Metatron, and something about that will maybe unconsciously awaken somebody to, exploring more about Metatron and exploring more about sacred geometry. So it's all connected.
Yeah, because you definitely do see that Megatron to Metatron pipeline with people. I know people like that. This is, this kind of reminds me when you talk about sort of pop culture, Atlantis, and these sort of symbols. I don't know if this is like a real thing or a joke thing, but you do see people online saying that you have Atlantis, Merlantis, and Fatlantis, where everybody was just fat.
I have never heard about Fatlantis. That must be some other alternate universe.
Like, what's the possibility that that's like real?
I don't even know what that is. It's just a land of fat people?
Well, like, you have the different shapes, different forms.
Well, I personally believe that there are so many different realities and realms that we cannot even wrap our mind around conceiving what's possible.
I think that is very true. I think I wish more people could grasp that.
Yeah.
And if more people want to grasp this and hear more about this, where can they find you online?
So the easiest place to find me would be my website, AmeeraAtlantis.com. And if you're interested in looking into a soul progression, past life regression, 13 chakra, Atlantean 13 chakra and aura healings, Atlantean Lemurian reconnection sessions, that's the best place to find me. I teach and talk about the eternality of the soul. One thing that is very important for us to remember as Atlantis is rising and during these changing times is that we are eternal beings. There is no death. This life is something we are participating in, a very important timeline, albeit. The Atlanteans forgot upon the fall of Atlantis that they were eternal, that there was no death. And there was a lot of grief and regret and sadness that happened in the collective when Atlantis fell that we are still trying to unravel and recover from. So when you go into a regression or soul progression, part of the healing process is going to the other side upon your death in that life and recognizing there is no death. You can also find me on Instagram under Ameera_Atlantis11 and, all the social medias. I'm there.
That's a heavy note to end on, but it's an important note to end on.
I think it's one of the most important because there's freedom in recognizing we are eternal.
There really is. Thank you for coming on, and I hope everyone goes and checks out your website.
Yeah, thank you for having me, Stanley.
That was Ameera Atlantis. I am joined now by my co-host, who I didn't think of a code name for in advance.
I heard your code name though, Stanley. I can't believe you told her that was your name. I can't believe you completely lied to her. I don't think she knew that you were a Fed based on the conversation you had.
She did not know I was a Fed, although Stanley is a nickname I have had in real life, as you know.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, that is the name I've been using to talk to people in the real world with interviews.
I'm gonna be Bart Simpson because I don't think it matters.
Well, anyway, Bart, what did you make of this interview with Ameera?
I'd say that was pretty wild. I don't know if it topped the Time Traveler, but maybe it did. It was I wish it were longer because she said a lot of wild stuff that like wasn't explored a lot, but it was very funny, and I feel like maybe you should at least feel a little bit bad because she seemed like a really nice person, and I laughed at your trolling when you said like stuff like Megatron or Fatlantis, but you should feel bad a little.
I don't feel bad because she laughed too.
I don't know if she picked up completely on you just being a CIA troll though.
I think she may have had a slight hint, but I don't think she picked up on it. If she listens to this, we probably won't be able to do a second interview, but I kind of want to do a second interview.
Ameera, we're sorry that we deceived you. We do work for the U.S. government. And yeah, we are hiding Atlantis and Merlantis. What are you going to do about it? We're watching you.
No, that part is a joke. Working for the government is not a joke. What he said, though, that is a joke. What I like about Ameera, and this is kind of what I want from guests moving forward, is, Bodacious John is clearly just a troll. He's just a guy lying on the internet. But from my guess, I'm not totally sure about this, but I think Ameera Atlantis is sincere. What did you think about that?
Yeah, she seemed way more sincere than Bodacious John. I think a lot of jeez, I don't know how to put this without sounding kind of offensive. Sort of 40s to 50s white ladies that believe in crystals and like astrology and stuff. They're all kind of like that. So they're all pretty sincere about it.
No, you're right. It does fall within some sort of understandable framework, even if she does take it further than your average person. A lot of people will say, hey, I really dig this amethyst pillar, but not a lot of people are going to say something like, yo, I used to be a mermaid,
Yeah. I mean, like, hearing Ameera talk, it's like, it's not hard to imagine her as, like my mom or your mom or like an aunt or something. Like, that's just, it sounds like a normal lady, even though what she was saying was completely schizophrenic.
Well, I cannot imagine her as my mom, first of all. But in general, I do get what you're saying. Yeah. I think, I don't know if this made it into the final, like, edit of your interview.
I cut out very little, so.
So did you leave in where she said she is from Portland, Oregon, but moved to Hawaii? It's like if someone told you, like, I used to be a mermaid, of course they're from Portland, and of course they moved to Hawaii. It's so fitting.
After hearing the interview, I looked at her Instagram, and she's quite tan. She's dark. I would not have imagined that she had not lived on the hot beaches of Hawaii her whole life.
Oh yeah, she definitely fits in to Hawaii. Her Instagram and her TikTok are just her, walking on the beach, holding crystal skulls and talking about, vibes and
just obtaining massive amounts of skin cancer.
Yeah. I will also add that she does, this didn't come up in the interview, but on her website you'll see that she does weddings, she does events, and she actually does baptisms. I don't know what exactly she baptizes you into. I don't think that the Orthodox Church, for instance, would officially sanction this sort of baptism, but she will baptize you.
She did mention God. She did talk about Metatron, which is like a Jewish angel or something. Yeah. So I think in some sense she's religious or, spiritual on the Christian side, but yeah, I'm not sure if that baptism counts.
No. I don't think it does. Metatron, I had not heard of Metatron before I started looking around these people website. Metatron is gonna come up in the next episode as well.
Yeah, we're gonna go on a huge Metatron arc from here on out.
There are gonna be other real episodes without guests, but for now, the podcast will continue to become increasingly unhinged. I hope that all of you guys are prepared for that.
Oh, we should probably just like address the whole Atlantis Merlantis thing from the our government standpoint. And I'm gonna be honest with you folks, Merlantis, that is not in any of our files. So she's either making it all up or she has information that we don't. That's all we can say.
That reminds me. I think it's time for listener emails.
Oh yeah.
I think this would be a good time for that.
What do we got? Is it better than the last time?
This is from Nigel. Nigel, thank you for listening. Thanks for emailing us. He says, this was sent a while ago, but we forgot about listener emails. But now we're
We're
back.
sorry, Nigel.
Yeah, sorry about that. But you can send us all your emails now. He said, "Hi guys, great episode. Please find attached a photo of the midday sun, fresh from New Zealand. As you will see, it is indeed very large and very white. Are you ever going to explain the reason for pivoting away from the old podcast? And are you going to do any episodes on prolific spewers of misinformation? I have more questions, but I have to go see a man about some creamy liquid. All the regards, Nigel." And he has attached a picture of the sun that does indeed look white.
That was a very heartwarming message, Nigel. Thank you.
Thank you. Here's to answer your question. We pivoted away from the previous podcast. Well, first of all, the big reason is because we got a lucrative deal, a lucrative government contract, where we're now being paid huge amounts of money for this.
They basically paid us off to stop talking about Joe Rogan. So that's number one.
Yeah, they wanted to shut that down and sort of, get us, co-opt us. And we were like, yes, we will sell out. So that is the main reason. And then sort of the sub reason below that, the less important reason, was just, honestly, I was getting kind of bored with it. I was tired of listening to JRE all the time and looking up, random, basically trivia information about like ivermectin or whatever, just like stuff I didn't really care about.
It was very time consuming, and we were misunderstood and unappreciated. If you see the reviews for this podcast, they still have the reviews for the old podcast, and you can see a lot of people were very upset for no reason.
Oh yeah, people were pissed. I encourage everyone to go read the reviews of the previous podcast because they're actually really funny. Yeah, they're pretty hilarious. On Apple Podcasts, which is like the only place you can leave reviews. You guys should go do that also.
I think we even made a special episode just reading reviews. So.
Oh yeah, I remember that. Maybe we should post that on like the main feed.
Yeah, let's just like repost that every couple of months.
We just post the same thing.
Yeah, it's funny.
It is pretty fun. I forgot about that. We should post it.
Was there another question in Nigel's email?
Oh yes, there was. He also said, "Are you going to do any episodes on prolific spewers of misinformation?"
Like Alex Jones. We did. What was that guy's name? Flamenco.
Yeah, I guess I could see us doing something like that. I think that could be fun if we found someone who was interesting. Like Alex Jones. I mean, everyone talks about Alex Jones. It'd have to be someone a little more unique,
Like, what's that guy's name? The WikiLeaks guy.
Julian Assange.
Yeah, all that was fake. It wasn't true.
Yeah, Julian.
We have to say that because we're government, but.
Yeah, if I saw Julian Assange right now, I would give him a powerful smack.
I'd arrest him. I'd do a legal arrest of Julian Assange. We'd take him straight to the gulag.
We have the ability to arrest people.
I think every American citizen does.
Remember that like line from 30 Rock where Jack's like, people forget this, but under the Patriot Act, any white male can arrest anyone he wants.
It's a privilege we enjoy daily.
Do you have anything else to say about Ameera Atlantis?
Was that all the emails? Just what?
Yeah.
Great. Yeah, I mean, we have hundreds of emails, but we're gonna give this spot special to Nigel. Thank you, Nigel. I have nothing more to say about Ameera Atlantis. Hopefully, she doesn't hate us after she listens to this.
I will say this: Ameera Atlantis is an official friend of the program, and the Lemurian Fellowship. I was not joking about that when I mentioned that in the interview. I emailed the Lemurian Fellowship. I forgot that I was going to talk about this. I emailed them and I said, "Hey, we've been discussing Lemuria. I would love to interview one of you guys." And they totally big-timed me, and they were like, "No, we will not come on your show." So the Lemurian Fellowship, which is some weird-ass cult in, like, SoCal, is officially an enemy of the show, and we have huge beef with them.
Hope you like IRS audits.
Yeah, exactly. They have made a powerful enemy.
Should we talk about the Little Mermaid for a second?
What about it?
Why'd they do that? I heard it bombed in China, kind of to be expected. I mean, pretty much every live action Disney movie remake has bombed so far. Even Mulan in China. So, you know.
I just wish they'd make more original stuff, you know?
Yeah, I'd wish they'd make more sequels to beloved franchises such as Fast and Furious. That's Disney, right? Make Fast 12, 13.
Here's what I'll say to close out here. We have a huge interview coming up. It's gonna blow this one away. It's gonna be. You're not ready for it. I'll say that.
Agent Stanley kind of cheaped out though, so it's only gonna be half as good as it could have been. If you would have just paid the guy a bit to, you know.
Oh, right. Wait. That's no spoilers, but there might be more to come with this guy. There's gonna be an episode without a guest. It's probably going to be on starseeds or wanderers, and that whole topic. But the show is gonna become probably just spiraling into insanity, I would say. That's what I feel like is happening already.
Yeah, I think we're probably gonna go crazy and probably get fired. So, you know, maybe we'll need a Patreon eventually to keep us afloat.
Our handlers have not commented on Ameera yet.
They've sent us just red pieces of paper, no text on it. I don't know what that means.
I don't know what it means. I didn't like it. If you have something to tell us about the interviews, about topics you'd like discussed, you can email us
at statsponconpod.net.gov.
Exactly. And we'll see you next week.